So Austin, you did hear what we were saying, just do not mention
Yes,
the
ma'am.
juvenile thing. Okay. And Chris, I don't know if you're on, Brandon indicated you all had discussed just not mentioning the juvenile's name.
Yes.
We are now live on YouTube. All right. Let me go ahead and swear your witness in. Oh, we don't have, hold on one second. We don't have, there goes Ba and Beatles. Okay, very, very good. Let me go ahead and swear the witness in. Do you swear from the information you give, any testimony you provide in the matter of the state versus Daquan Ba and the state versus John Beatles is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Your witness.
Detective, would you please tell us your name and how you're employed?
Officer Michelle Austin, Clayton County Police Department.
How long have you worked with the Clayton County Police Department?
6 years.
And is it, just so we make sure, is it officer or detective?
It's field training officer. It's officer now.
Okay. Were you assigned a case regarding an alleged incident that happened on May 20th of 2020 at 83 Woburn Street in Jonesboro?
Yes, ma'am. I was actually on call that week, so I was called out for the case directly to the scene.
Was there a complainant that called out to the scene? How did you get called out to the scene?
I was called out by the juvenile victim's mother. She is actually the one that called 911 after after the juvenile returned home from the incident location, and she was made aware of the situation.
What information were you able to gather from the juvenile's mother?
The juvenile's mother stated that she had been missing, and she was actually in our system as a missing person for approximately 3 days from that Wednesday evening, I believe it was, until the actual incident date when she returned home. And when she returned home, the juvenile's mother said that the juvenile relayed to her that she had had sexual relations with 4 to 5 individuals in a household in a nearby neighborhood.
Was the mother able to give you the address where the juvenile indicated she was?
Yes, ma'am. I was actually called out to that address as the incident location. When 911 was first activated, the road officers went to the victim's home, which is not far from the incident location, and the victim could not give an address. So the officers, the victim's mother put her inside of the vehicle and asked her to point out to her where exactly it was that the incident location was. So as the officers followed that vehicle, her mother's vehicle, the suspects or offenders were actually on the front lawn of the property, and the victim was able to point out that property to the officer. The officer then told the victim's mother to keep driving. They drove to the end of the block where they waited until CID was activated. So when I responded to the end of the block of the actual location of the incident.
After the juvenile was able to point out the address, at that point, did you make contact with the people at that address?
I first made the officers had everyone basically outside when I pulled up. So I first went and made contact with the victim and her mom in their private vehicle at the end of the block. I audio recorded a one-on-one interview with the mom's permission of the victim, who was able to give me details of each individual that she had sex with over the 3-day period that she was gone. So she was able to give me hair, clothing they had been wearing, height, weight, descriptions, and it was all audio recorded. Then I went to the residence and started making contact with the individuals that were actually outside of the residence.
Also, do you have the information as to what Well, first let me ask this. Was the juvenile able to give you names of the individuals?
She was able to give me a specific name of one individual who was not a person that we're speaking of today. And everyone else was mainly nicknames or a first name and a description.
After getting that information, that recorded information from the juvenile victim, um, tell us what did you do after that in your investigation?
We then transported everyone. One person, like I said, we're not speaking about today, was actually arrested. The rest of the individuals were transported down to the precinct. We had normal audio and video recorded interviews. Everyone was read their Miranda rights in the interview room. And I spoke to each one individually to try to match up whose name was who. I interviewed everyone with the second party, of course, another detective, and basically broke down a story of what happened over the 3 days with each one individually.
Okay, let's take one of the defendants first with Mr. Ball. Did you have an opportunity to interview him?
Yes, I interviewed Mr. Ba at it looks like here 7:06 p.m. Mr. Ba was interviewed
Okay.
on May 23rd.
What information, if any, was Mr. Ba able to provide to you?
Mr. Ba stated that he did see the female. The female was at the house that 3 evenings when she had disappeared or went missing from her mother's house. He stated that there was a barbecue at the house and that the victim did spend the night at the house. He told me that the victim told him, along with the other males at the house, that she was 19 years old. He stated that he did not have sexual intercourse with the victim, but that he did receive oral sex from the victim on the night that she spent the night at the house.
And this is Mr. Ba.
This is Mr. Ba.
Whose residence was this, the officer?
The residence belonged to, let me just get her stuff out. I'm sorry, I just pulled up Mr. Ba and Mr. Beatles. I didn't pull up the resident. I believe it was Beatles' mother who is the resident on the actual lease that's renting the house.
Okay, so let's just because I want to be clear, Mr. Ba indicated he did not have sexual intercourse with the victim.
Yes, ma'am. He said he did not have sexual intercourse with the victim, that he received oral sex from the victim.
Did the victim indicate that she had sexual intercourse with Mr. Ba?
No, the victim stated that she gave Mr. Ba oral sex.
Were you able to determine how many times the sexual encounters happened between Mr. Ba and the victim?
Mr. Ba stated that it happened once. He stated it happened once the Wednesday night of the barbecue. The victim, however, stated that it happened 2 nights in a row.
Was the victim able to indicate where at this location the incident took place with she and Mr. Ba?
I can tell you right now, just pulling up hers. Have all 3 of their interviews up. The victim stated that Mr. Ba took place in the garage.
Were there any details given regarding what was in the garage? Were they in a car? Were they just on the floor?
They were on, she described a broken down chair that we did see in the garage. I don't know if the county photographer took a picture of it, but there was a chair in the corner of the garage. She also described a red cooler with a white top, which wasn't in the garage when we went through the house with the search warrant. It was actually located in the living room. So I don't know if it was moved after the barbecue but we did see that in the living room as well. I know the photographer took a picture of that.
And officer, how old is this victim?
She is 15 at the time of the incident.
Okay. And at the time of the incident, do you have a date of birth for Mr. Ball?
Yes, he actually gave me his date of birth. Mr. Ba. That's Beatles. Mr. Ba gave me the date of birth for 10/13/1993, so that would make him 26.
Okay.
My math is right. I could be off.
Was the victim able to indicate whether or not the, I guess, the person who was the who owned the property or who was renting the property, was that person there at the home?
Yes, she was there. She's actually the person that put her out of the home the day we responded. She put her out that morning. So she said she was aware that she was there to 3 days, and she told her she had to leave that morning.
So we're clear, and that person is related to?
Yes, it's going to be the mother, their mother.
Is this the mother of Mr. Ball or Mr. Beatles?
Let me just pull it up. It says it in their interviews. I believe it's going to be Mr. Beatles, the Beatles brother. Yes, I believe it's Mr. Beatles that is their mother.
Okay.
I didn't bring her. I'm sorry, I don't have her information.
Okay.
I actually did file charges though for the disorderly household. I just don't have her up because she wasn't on the file for today.
Was the victim able to give any information as to if she was at this home for 3 days? Is that right?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did she have a bedroom? Was she sleeping any particular place?
Well, the first night, it was kind of a camp out in the living room area. Then she said that the mother was complaining that she spent the night, so she was brought up to a bedroom area of the person who she knew that lived in the residence as well, who was also arrested. But like I said, it's a separate side of it. But that is, she stayed the last 2 nights was in a bedroom on the second floor, the first bedroom on the right, which would be for our other defendant.
Okay. Did you all take photographs all inside the residence and the bedrooms?
Yes, ma'am. We got the garage area, the living room area, and the upstairs bedroom on the right where she says she spent the last 2 nights. We also collected the bedding off the bed that she was able to describe the sheets during her interview of the sheets that were on the bed.
Did Mr. Ball indicate whether or not he knew the victim before this happened?
He stated he did not. He even when I interviewed him, he wasn't able to tell me the victim's name. He did not know her. The first time meeting her would have been the night of the cookout.
Were you able to interview Mr. John Beatles?
Yes.
What information did Mr. John Beatles provide to you?
Mr. Beatles, minimize. So Mr. Beatles was not on scene the day of the actual incident. I actually called him and interviewed him on June 1st because he was at work. Mr. Beatles stated that he also came when he got off work, he came home and she was already at the house the night of the cookout. He stated that the victim did leave the house with them at some point to go to a package store and maybe to a McDonald's. Mr. Beatles stated, Mr. Beatles stated that she advised him that she was 19 years old as well. And Mr. Beatles believe his oral sex, I believe, took place in the living room. Just scroll down to the bottom of his interview. Okay, so Beatles said that she actually spent Thursday night in his bedroom because I guess they call their mother Ma Duke, but Ma Duke was really having a problem with her being in the house at this point. This would have been the second night.
Did Mr. Beatles, what did he indicate whether or not he had sexual encounters with the victim?
Yes, he stated that he did have sexual encounters with the victim, and he also gave DNA during his interview.
What sexual encounters did Mr. Beatles indicate that he had with the victim?
Let's see. Okay, Beatles advised the only thing that happened between he and the victim was oral sex. When I asked what room it happened in, Beatles advised it happened in his room. When I asked him was it Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, Beatles advised that it happened on Thursday night in his bedroom.
And again, regarding Mr. Beatles, how old was the victim at the time?
I believe she was 15 at the time of this incident.
And how old was Mr. Beatles at the time of the incident?
Mr. Beatles, scrolling back up, I'm sorry, everything's running slow. I believe Mr. Beatles is 19. No, he's born 6/29/1994, so.
Okay. Throughout the time with these, with the sexual encounters with Mr. Baugh and Mr. Beatles, did the victim indicate whether or not she had any type of narcotics or alcohol, anything like
She
that?
said she was drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana the entire time she was there up until the night before she was put out of the residence. So every day she was there was drinking, there was alcohol and marijuana involved.
Was the victim able to give you information as to who provided the marijuana and the alcohol?
No, she just said that it was kind of like a rotation session. She said they just kept rotating it all around. She wasn't really able to narrow down who gave her what.
Did the victim indicate that she knew the people who lived at this residence?
She stated she did not know them. She just had seen them in the neighborhood when she was walking, going around the neighborhood. But she said she didn't know the males. Two of them, or excuse me, he would have been number 3 or 4. So one of them is still outstanding. One of the males that she described is still outstanding person that we have never been able to figure out who that was.
Had the victim ever seen the mother before?
She stated that was the day she was invited, not invited, but when she walked by the house and they told her she can come into the cookout, she said that's the first day that she was around the mother.
I know you indicated that victim indicated that she did have sexual intercourse with Mr. Baugh.
Mm-hmm.
Did she indicate how many times she had sexual intercourse with Mr. Baugh?
She stated Mr. Baugh was twice. It would have been Wednesday night.
Excuse me?
That assumes facts, not an evidence. She asked her how many times my client had sex with Mr. Ball. There's been no testimony that my client had sex with the victim. It was supposed to be oral sex on 2 occasions. So the question to the officer was, how many times did she tell you she had sex? That's leading and also assumed fact, not in evidence.
All right, so hold on. So your objection is that instead of saying oral sex, that the question just referred to sex. So you just want, because it's already been testified to Officer Austin, Detective Austin already said that there have been 2 times of oral sex. So is it, I'm just trying to understand before you respond to the objection, Attorney Freeman, I'm just trying to understand what the basis of the objection is.
The basis of my objection, Judge, is that she's asking questions, assuming facts that are not in evidence. She asked him how many times my client had sexual intercourse. That's not on the record. That's not what was been testified to.
So your preference is that the reference is oral sex, because that is what Detective Austin already testified to.
Yes, sexual intercourse and oral sex are not the same thing.
I can go back and rephrase, because I just want to be clear. So Officer Austin, because we're going to go back. So regarding oral sex, how many times did the victim indicate that she had oral sex with Mr. Baugh?
Twice.
Did the victim indicate that there was any other type of sexual encounters with Mr. Baugh?
When Mr. Baugh, she stated that no other sexual encounters with Mr. Baugh.
Now, officer, do you have a copy of the warrants you took out regarding Mr. Baugh?
I do not have a copy of the warrants. I just have all of our the summaries. Hold on, let me see something before I say no to you.
Because I just want to make sure that we're clear on.
I don't, but you can go ahead and ask your question though.
Well, I guess, my question is going to reference, I need you to refer back to your warrant, because my question is, did the victim indicate that there, other than oral sex, was there, or were there any other sexual encounters that she alleged that she had with Mr. Baugh? And so at this point, I need, if you don't have a copy of your warrant, then I need to make sure, I need to ask if I could thoroughly, Your Honor, have a couple minutes to get Ms. Austin, Officer Austin, a copy of her warrants.
And of course, Judge, and I'm going to object, the detective has her summaries. She's not indicated that she's had any indication that she's had any memory issues or forgot anything or is having trouble recollecting anything. So she's answered the question twice now. I think the question has been asked and answered regarding any type of relationship that my client allegedly had with the victim. Going back into the warrant, the question's already been asked and answered. It's not necessary.
Okay, I have the summary piece that you're talking about whenever you guys are ready.
Okay, so it seems like that objection is.
If it is it mute? If
It's moot. I would say it's moot.
Yes.
It's a moot objection. Go ahead and answer the question, please, Detective Austin.
Okay, so the victim stated that she, that Mr. Baugh asked her if he was, excuse my language, Judge, fuck worthy, and that she had sex with he along with 2 other males that Wednesday night. The victim stated that Mr. Baugh was trying to get her after the orgy to give him oral sex, and that's when she was forced to give him oral sex that Wednesday night. And then again, that Thursday night, she gave him oral sex. So this is what the victim stated: 2 nights of oral sex and 1 night of an orgy, which would have been Wednesday night that included Mr. Baugh. Mr. Baugh denied the orgy.
And just so we're clear, because there may be different interpretations of orgy.
That would have been sexual intercourse between her and the 3 males.
And those 3 males included Mr. Ba and Mr. John Beatles.
Yes. I'm sorry, my computer's moving a little slow, but I found it in the summary.
Did those incidents, are those all alleged to have taken place at the 83 Woburn Street in Jonesboro?
Yes, ma'am. The orgy with the sexual intercourse took place in the living room, where we did find evidence in the living room that was collected and it's being tested. And then the oral sex the next night took place in the bedroom, and the oral sex with Mr. Beatles took place in the bedroom as well.
Also, I know in the beginning you indicated that the victim's mother called 911 when after the juvenile had left his home. Were you able to get any information from the victim as to what sparked her leaving this residence?
There was no information on what sparked her leaving. She said she was just taking a walk. I guess she said she was bored and she was just walking. And when she was walking through the neighborhood, she seen 5 or 6 guys sitting out on the front lawn. And she went over and sparked a conversation with them. And that's when they invited her into the backyard or into the house for the barbecue that they were having. But there was nothing that led up to her leaving. It wasn't a runaway type thing from what she described. But like I said, her mother did report her missing that night.
Was the victim taken to any medical facility to get examined?
Yes, she was examined. We did collect all of her clothing, her panties. She still had on the same underwear and stuff. So everything was collected and a rape kit was done. It was submitted to GBI, and warrants were done for everyone's DNA. And that was also submitted. I think one who is not today actually did voluntary to DNA, but everything else was collected from every party.
Okay, just one moment, Your Honor. Trying to make sure I don't leave anything out. Officer, I know you talked about the oral sex, and I just want to be clear. In oral sex between the victim and Mr. Ba, could you please tell us exactly in detail what she indicated was the oral sex?
She said that Mr. Ba stuck his penis into her mouth, and she stated that she did have a orgy or I can't even really say it's a threesome. It was 3 guys that she had sex with at one time in the living room, Mr. Ba being one of the males. And that would have been sexual intercourse, penis to vagina.
Regarding Mr. John Beatles, can you also give the same type of detail as to what the victim indicated?
She stated that with Mr. Beatles, she had oral sex, she had regular sex or intercourse in the living room. And she said with Mr. Beatles, she had sex in his bedroom. Mr. Beatles stuck out to me because the reason I was able to clarify that the mother knew she was still in the residence is because the victim stated that the mother actually walked in the bedroom on Thursday night while she and Mr. Beatles were having sex.
Did the victim also indicate that she had oral sex with Mr. John Beatles?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you please tell us exactly what that oral sex was?
It was penis to mouth oral sex that took place twice, once in the living room and once upstairs in the bedroom.
Also, did all of these incidents alleged incidents take place in Clayton County?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, I'm gonna start with Attorney Lewis. Your cross-exam will go first, sir. And you represent whom? You represent Mr. Beatles, correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, go ahead, sir.
Detective, can you hear me okay?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Now, Detective, you outlined a series of events as to how the victim got into the home, and you indicated that she indicated to you that there was a barbecue going on and that she walked up and then was invited into the house subsequently. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I guess before I go into the details of that, can you give me the either exact or approximate date that she initially went into the home?
That would have been the Wednesday night.
Okay.
So,
Do you have a date?
yep, I can get you a date. Hold on one second. I'm just scrolling up. It's just moving really slow.
It's okay.
So May 23rd is the date that I was called out. So it would have been the 20th, Wednesday, May 20th.
Okay. So the 20th is when she initially went in. The 23rd is when she returned home to her mother.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And again, it wasn't her that called the police. It was the mom that called the police. Am I correct?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So when the initial report was taken, the initial report was taken from what the daughter told the mother. Am I correct?
Well, then the initial report was taken as the mother being the complainant in the juvenile's testimony. The way it works,
Okay.
because CID was called out, it all will go into one because we were able to interview the victim. So the mother would be the complainant and the juvenile would be the victim. So it's her testimony and her mother's testimony, but the mother initiated the call, yes.
Okay. I guess what I'm trying to get at is that the mother was not a witness to any of that. So the initial testimony that came out was the daughter telling the mother what happened, and then the mother telling the initial responding officers what happened.
Yes, from what I understand, but I wasn't there when initial officers came out. I was called out after the fact.
Understood. So would you also know whether when that initial in-person interview took place, whether the mother was separated from the daughter or whether they were speaking with them at the same time? Would you
I
know
wouldn't
that?
know that with the responding officers. I was called out a little over an hour after the responding officers. My interview with the victim, with the mother's permission, took place separate from the mother. I took her out the backseat of her mother's car and put her in the backseat of my county vehicle and interviewed her. So it was separate.
Okay. And have you had training in doing forensic interviews of
Yes, sir.
children when it comes to
Yes, I'm child first certified.
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Officer, I'm sorry.
No,
And
you're fine.
your interview was memorialized in the form of being taped, am I correct?
Yes, it was audio recorded and then it was sent up to our transcriber and she transcribed it into a summary.
Okay. Since all this has happened, do you know if the victim has been interviewed by a psychologist for forensic purposes?
She was sent to Florida and signed into a facility in Florida right after, about, I say, a week and a half to 2 weeks after. It's all in the notes. I documented it. Her mom brought her in for a photo lineup just so we can seal up some loose ends on the case. And she was signed into a facility where she is receiving psychiatric and drug help.
Okay. Now, did you ever have occasion to view a police report which indicated that she was walking on the street and a car pulled up and began speaking with her?
No,
Does that sound
No.
familiar? Okay.
nope.
All right. Now, when she went into the barbecue, and even when she first went into the home, Mr. Beatles was not there. Am I correct?
No, he wasn't. He was at work when she first entered the house. He said when he came home, she was there already.
And so it was not Mr. Beatles that asked her to come into the home.
She never said it was
Am I
Mr.
correct?
Beatles. She said it was 5 males. She never stated who asked her to come in. She just said 5 males were on the front lawn that she started speaking with.
Now, when you are interviewing her and she indicated to you that she had either sexual intercourse or sexual contact with 4 or 5 males, I think what you indicated is that you were trying to ascertain the identity of these people by descriptions as well as names or nicknames. Is that correct?
Yes, because she said that she was under the influence of both alcohol and marijuana, and I didn't want to lead her. That's why I moved her away from the house. I asked her before I went over to see who the suspects were to give me a description based on hair, clothing, height, weight, things of that nature.
So I won't ask you about all of the descriptions. Let me just focus on Mr. Beatles.
Mhm.
What did she describe that was consistent with the appearance, height, weight, skin and complexion of Mr. Beatles? What did she say specifically? How did she identify him?
Let me go through the notes because it's a lot. She described Mr. Beatles. Hold on, I'm getting to him because she described 4 different individuals. She described Mr. Beatles as a light-skinned male. I think she said something about color. Hold on. She's described him as skinny. He was the slinkier one. She stated he was not a person that she's seen outside when her mother drove her by the house. She said he was not one of the males that was on the lawn. She described him as tall, and when I asked her what does she mean by tall, she said taller than her. So I said, well, give me about a roundabout height. She had a brother or somebody that was in her mom's car, and I said, compared to him, what do you think how do you think he was about his height or a little bit taller? And she said he was a little bit taller than the male, her brother that was inside of the car.
Okay. Was she able to give a clothing description of anything that he was wearing over the course of those 3 days?
No, she did not give a clothing description for him.
Okay. All right. Did she indicate to you that it was Mr. Beatles that either provided the marijuana or the alcohol?
No.
Did she describe who gave her the alcohol or the marijuana?
She said it was just passed around. The first night, like I said, she didn't describe Mr. Beatles as being there the entire night. So when Mr. Beatles came in the first night, which would have been the Wednesday night, she was already intoxicated at that point.
Okay. Did she indicate that Mr. Beatles at any point consumed either alcohol or marijuana?
She said he consumed alcohol and marijuana, yes.
And did she give a nickname for Mr. Beatles?
She gave a lot of nicknames, but we weren't able to put together which nickname. We just went by, Bo, and she wasn't able to. There was a lot of nicknames she threw out, but she couldn't. She just went. She was able to give us nickname based on conversations they were having. She wasn't able to match up the nickname to the actual person. You know what I'm saying? She just gave me nicknames that she heard throughout the course of her being in the house.
You described earlier that at some point they went to a store or a McDonald's or something of that nature.
That's what Mr. Beatles said happened.
That's what Mr. Beatles said happened.
Mm-hmm.
Did she also corroborate that?
No, she didn't mention anything about leaving the house to go to a McDonald's or a store. She stated she was in the house the entire time.
Did Mr. Beatles indicate to you, and I hate to be graphic, but did Mr. Beatles indicate to you that she was on her menstrual cycle at the time?
No, hold on. Let me just go back and make sure, but I don't think he did. Hold on one second. Because she actually told me that.
So that came from her.
Yeah, she did say she did say that her menstrual had started. She didn't say if it started during the time she was there or if it had started that day, but I do remember her saying she was on her menstrual.
Did she indicate to you that Mr. Beatles actually went to the store to get her some tampons?
No.
Did she or Mr. Beatles indicate that?
No, but I'm going back to Mr. Beatles' interview now just to be sure, but I know she never said anyone went to a store to get her tampons. I just want to make sure it didn't come up in Mr. Beatles' interview. I don't remember anything about tampons though.
And just one last question concerning that is that when she indicated to you,
Losing you, buddy.
Okay.
Is that his?
That's
think
it.
so.
Everybody,
Okay.
once, as long as everyone else is moving. Attorney Lewis, you went out for like a second. So if you will repeat that last question.
yes. Did she ever indicate to you that either the intercourse, the sexual intercourse that occurred while she was on her menstrual cycle?
No, I don't remember that coming up in our interview at all. But I mean, like I said, I'm looking through hers and his as we speak. If you want to give me a moment just to ensure. But I do not remember the menstrual cycle coming up until toward the end of our interview. And that was because her mother said she was going to bring her home to go get some change of clothes because she had started her menstrual, but it was never clarified if she was on it when it happened.
Okay. All right. I'll move on from that. Now she indicated to you, did she use the word orgy, or is that language that you are using?
No. That's what's in her interview notes. She said orgy.
All right. And when she described the orgy, I think you indicated that it was her and 3 other persons. Am I correct?
Yes, she said three other people in the living room the first Wednesday night. She said it was 3 people in the living room that she had the orgy with the first Wednesday night. But she described, like I said, she did say that she was under the influence of alcohol and drugs, and she did describe another male coming into the living room at one point having regular intercourse with her. But this male, we never figured out who this male was because it wasn't any of the description of the people that I encountered that day on the front lawn, and it wasn't Mr. Beatles when I interviewed him a couple days later.
Okay. Now, Mr. Beatles denies that he was involved in the orgy. Am I correct?
Yes, he denied it. He said he had only had been with her the one time, which would have been the Thursday night.
Okay. And so what is the information that she gave you that led to the probable cause to believe that Mr. Beatles was one of the 3 individuals or 4 individuals who was involved in the orgy? Did she describe him? How did she come to that?
She described him. She described him, and it matched up with his story of him coming in from work. He wasn't there the entire time of everything that was going on. She described another light-skinned male who came into the residence later on in the evening. And she described basically Mr. Beatles. It was a tall male. She said she thought it was the brother of somebody who was in the house. She said she remembered him calling his mother, who is the resident owner, Ma Dukes. It was her interview along with his interview. I just went through the transcripts and put people with people to see who was who. But she did describe Mr. Beatles. And when I interviewed him a couple of days later, he described what she had already told me as far as him just getting off of work, him coming into the cookout late, her already being in the living room, drinking and smoking. Everything she said is what he described to me in his interview.
All right. So let me just be a little more specific. I understand that she described Mr. Beatles.
Mhm.
Did she describe the three people specifically as the three people specifically that had sex with her in the orgy? Did she describe Mr. Beatles in that particular description in the interview?
Yes.
Okay.
Let me go back into her interview, but yes, Mr. Beatles is one of the three that she stated had sex with her in the living room.
Okay. And then I think you also indicated that she also had sex with Mr. Beatles in a room upstairs,
Yes.
and that the mother walked in on them while they were having sex.
Yes.
And have you spoken with the mother? Did she corroborate that?
The mother, I have not spoken with the mother. The mother actually was not cooperative once she seen what was going on as far as her sons and the other guests in the house were concerned. She was not cooperative. Everyone else came down, for their interviews. It wasn't they had to come down. It was a voluntary. They came down to the precinct with us, did their interview, signed in Miranda. We couldn't force the mother, of course, to talk to us. She shut down once she seen or got a whiff of what exactly it was we were investigating. The mother also stated that she had no idea that the juvenile was a juvenile. So of course, once she found that out, all bets were off. She wasn't going to talk to us anymore.
Did the juvenile describe any of the sexual intercourse as having taken place with or without a condom?
She stated the sexual intercourse took place without a condom. However, Mr. Beatles told me it took place with a condom.
Okay, so that would have been the oral sex. He said that he had oral sex with her with a condom on.
That's what he stated.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It's in his interview. He said he had oral sex with her with a condom on.
And was there any? I think you said that he consented to a swab test. Were there any items that were taken or removed from the home that were used to either cross-reference his DNA with the DNA of the victim?
We took the sheets off the bed upstairs where he and the victim and another male slept. That he said he was in that room. But like I said, this was before we even interviewed him because he was interviewed a couple of days later. He was at work when this all took place. There was a swabs taken of the living room sofa downstairs. There was a condom that was found downstairs on the living room sofa. And then of course her clothing and her panties and her rape kit.
Okay. Officer, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. You described at some point, not with respect to Mr. Beatles, that there was some force involved. When she described the sexual intercourse that occurred with Mr. Beatles, the sexual intercourse, did she describe it as being forced?
No.
All right. No further questions, Your Honor.
All right. Attorney Tolles for Mr. Bob.
Yes. The victim in this particular case, you don't have any information that she ran away?
What do you mean, any information after she ran away? I don't understand the question you're asking me.
As part of your investigation, the reason why she was out that night, do you have any information that she actually ran away?
Well, she never told us that she ran away. She said that she left the house to go take a walk, and that's how she happened upon them on the front lawn. The mother stated that she filed a missing person report, and my investigation found that this victim had a history of missing persons, which would lead me to believe that she was a runaway, but nothing in my investigation, and she never admitted to running away from her house that night.
Okay. So the mother says she ran away.
The mother says she reported her missing. She never says she ran away.
You sure about that?
She never told me she ran away. She told me that she reported her missing, and I went in our system and I seen she was a missing person on our system. So if she told the officers that prior to me getting there, I wouldn't know, but she didn't tell me that she ran away from home.
Have you reviewed case number 2002 4045, a CCPD police report where the victim was reported to have run away?
I want to object, Your Honor. I'm not sure the report number that Mr. Toast just indicated. I don't know if that's part of this report or if that's a separate case. The officer has already testified as to that the victim never said that she ran away, nor did the mother.
Attorney Toles, let me say this. If we were in court, clearly you could present something to Detective Austin that she could look at and decide or determine or discern whether or not it's something she'd seen or had access to. So for you to just give a report number and say that you're reading something, that you can't do that. So I agree with the objection of the state. You can't just say based on this report number. You can ask her, did she make a report? She's already indicated she has no information about the child being a runaway, that everything she has access to indicated that the child is a missing person. That's all. Move on, please, sir.
Okay, Detective,
Yes, sir.
do you have your case file in front of you?
I have my summaries. We're not allowed to bring the case files home, but anything I've typed up is on my computer in front of me. Yes.
Okay. As part of your case file, would that include the initial police report?
The initial police report, yes. The hard copy case file. It wouldn't be in my computer case though.
Okay. Have you reviewed the police report written by an officer by the name of E. Amador?
No.
No.
If I reviewed it, it would have been the first week that I got this case back in May. So I can't quote anything that would have been in that police report. They write the police report, we put it in the beginning of the case file, and then we work our case up from there. So the only thing I have is my investigation side of it.
Okay. So as part of your investigation, you would not review the initial police report to discover the fact and circumstances as to how this young lady ended up at this house?
Well,
you have not done that?
my initial, when I got to the scene that day, that police report would not have been filed yet. So I started on the day of the incident from my investigation on. However, a copy of the police report is in the case file that I would have gotten about 4 to 5 days later when it goes through the chain. So that is in the hard copy case file, but I don't have access to that now because I can't bring that case file home.
Okay. Well, let me ask you a question. It's against the law to give false information to the police, correct?
Yes.
And if somebody gave false information, that might affect their credibility and believability, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if your statement is that the victim told you that she was just merely walking up the street when she ran into these guys, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So hypothetically, if it was discovered that she actually had run away
I
for
want to
3 days,
object.
You can't do it hypothetically, counselor. You know this. You can only ask the officer what she knows, what she's determined based on her investigation. If we did hypotheticals, we would be here for the next 5 or 6 hours. It's not about.
I disagree, Judge. What I'm trying to get this officer to establish is just hypothetically, if someone makes a statement that is untrue and is inconsistent, that it would make them, not as credible as they would be if they were consistent about, hey, if I ran away, if I didn't run away, if I was walking down the street, not walking down the street, that
presupposes too much, counselor.
And it's a hypothetical question as well, too.
I understand, but you can't ask the officer a hypothetical question about what information another officer has determined.
I'm not asking her an
That's
hypothetical.
Sir, so I'm not, listen to me, counselor. Okay. I'm not going back and forth with you about this one.
Judge, I'm just trying to get to the facts and the truth.
I understand that. Case. We're not doing hypotheticals here. We're doing facts. Move into facts.
Okay. So the facts are, officer, that you would want the truth when somebody's telling you something, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And if they're not truthful with you, then that's going to be an issue, correct?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Okay. So on the record, the victim has told you that she was merely walking down the street when she ran into guys. She wasn't missing. She wasn't running away, correct?
She wasn't asked, was she missing or running away? She was asked to bring me back to Wednesday when she left her residence and to walk me through the days leading up to her to that date. That's how it's done for the forensic interview. I don't ask her questions. So what the victim stated to me exactly was, the victim stated she was walking when one of the guys stopped her and asked her how she was doing. The victim responded that she is doing fine. The victim stated the male asked her if she was single and she responded yes, and that's how the conversation unraveled up until that Wednesday. That's how it went. She just broke down, gave me a storyline of what happened, what took place from the time she made contact with these male individuals to the time she left their house. That's where we start at. Anything prior to that, I wouldn't have asked her about, because that's not how you run a forensic interview. You're only dealing with the actual incident.
Okay, so who was the male that she was having this conversation with?
She just said a male. This one, it just says a male, so it doesn't give me that. What happens with forensic interviews, you let the victim talk, and then afterwards you go back through the notes and you try to put names or hair color or distinguishing features like tattoos and things of that nature, but you just let them run through the whole thing first, and then you go back and you try to put a person to it.
Okay, were you able to put a person to this person that she was talking to?
No.
No.
Nope.
Okay. All right. So she had a conversation with someone, a very detailed conversation with someone, the initial conversation with someone, but she's not able to tell you who this person is, correct?
Well, it wasn't that detailed. It was more of a, are you single? And what she was able to tell me about it is that, excuse me, one, I don't know if I can even discuss, because it's another defendant. So I don't know if that one can come in, but she was able to give me that one's name, because that's the main one she knew from around the neighborhood. The other was Bo and Mo, is how she started. The victim stated one guy had long dreads, slim, and goes by Bo or Mo. The victim stated that the other male is fat with shorter dreads. The victim stated that the fat guy with the short dreads go by Mo. Then she described a dark-skinned guy with a mini afro, who we never figured out who that was. Then she goes on to finish telling her story. The victim stated that all the individuals were sitting out in front of the house, that the one male walked up to her and asked her if she was single. The victim stated this took place Wednesday during the day. She was offered a seat outside if she can go into the house instead of sit. She asked if she can go into that. She asked if she can go into the house instead of sitting outside.
Okay.
So it's like a childish story. I mean, this is a victim that you can't really lead. You have to let her tell the story how she tells it, and you just go back and you put the pieces that she gives you together.
Okay. So she indicated that she wanted to come into the house, correct?
Yes, she said it started, I don't remember if it was rain. I think it might have started raining or it was getting chilly out. I think it was raining. Like, I would have to go through and tell you the exact weather, because one of the suspects told me it was raining, that it started raining that evening as well.
Okay.
But yes, she admitted to that she asked to go into the house, just like I said, she admitted that she told them she was 19 years old as well.
Okay. So she's and she did so, and your understanding of the facts is that is also a lie. So she told to these young men that she was 19, that of her age, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So when she she got into the house under false pretenses, correct? That she was an adult.
I would say it was under, yeah, I would say that was under false pretense if they thought she was 19 years old. Yes.
Okay. And so there was actually a female in the house, correct? An older female, somebody's mother.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Ma Dukes.
Ma Dukes. Okay. What is Ma Dukes? Does she have any kind of profession, or who is she?
This is the woman that was on scene, that's supposed to be the mother of the household.
She was arrested too, correct?
She was later, warrants were taken out, but that was for disorderly household. That wasn't involved. She wasn't, it was because of the weed, the alcohol, the underage in the household. So she was disorderly household. I did not arrest her myself, no.
Okay. So the mother, this Ma Dukes, had knowledge that this victim was in her home, correct?
According to the victim and according to Mr. Beatles, yes.
Had seen this person, correct?
I'm sorry?
Had seen this person?
Yes. All 3 days until the morning she put her out.
Did she got put out?
Yes.
Okay, not she was thrown on a curb or anything and left for dead. She was actually
no, she was told to get out.
Told to get out.
Yeah.
Okay. By Ma Dukes, so she had been over there for several days, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And why was she kicked out?
According to my dupes, or according to the victim, you want me to give you the victim's reason for it?
If that's what she said.
Okay,
if
according to the
that's
victim, my dupes told her she had to get out because she was laying up in her house fucking all her sons. That was the victim's words.
okay. Is there any other reason why she was told to get out?
Nope, that was it. That's the only
Okay.
reason I was given.
All right. And even at that time, Ma Dukes and everybody else believed that she was 19 years old, correct?
I don't know about my dupes, but yeah, Mr. Beatles, all the people that had sexual contact with her that I interviewed said that she stated she was 19, and she said she stated she was 19. I don't know about if the mother even ever questioned her age. I wouldn't know. I didn't interview her.
All right. Okay. So everything that happened in that house pretty much was consensual, correct? It's,
I'm gonna object
No,
to
I don't think you can
I'm-
get consensual sex with a.
I'm gonna
So what-
object to that.
what,
That calls for a legal conclusion. That's
Your response?
Judge, it doesn't cause for a leading conclusion. It just determines whether or not the sex was forced. Was it consensual? Was it done with her consent? That's not a legal
I think that
conclusion.
when you use the term consensual and it's someone under the age of 16, that belies the entire legal premise that somebody under the age of 16 is not able to give consent to sex. So to ask the officer to make a determination as to whether or not it's consensual, that's kind of my purview, is decide whether or not this person is of the age where they can even give consent. So you can't ask that question of the detective.
Well, my question wasn't a legal question of consent, was more of the Webster's Dictionary of consent. In other words, did she do it because she wanted to do it and she allowed herself to do it? Not what the law may say, but what this victim wanted to do, purporting to be a 19-year-old, an adult.
Perhaps you rephrase your question and don't use the word consensual, because that's a legal term. I don't know, we can split hairs and talk about it being in Webster's, Merriam-Webster's, wherever it is a legal term. And in this particular format, in this whole scheme of things, consensual is legal. It's a legal term.
Right, and I'm talking about consent versus force.
Then don't use the term consent. Use a different term. That's all.
I'd have to get out my thesaurus, Judge, and get another word for consent.
Well,
Well, let me ask you this question, Detective. She never stated that Mr. Baugh forced her to do anything, correct?
No.
Okay. And in the interview with Mr. Baugh, didn't he indicate that the young lady actually, without his consent, started putting her mouth on him? Isn't that what he told you? And they were laying in the bed, and that's how his penis got into her mouth, because she initiated that contact without his consent.
I don't remember that part of our interview, but I'm gonna go back and look before I say no.
Okay.
All right, we're at Mr. Ba. No, I don't see anything in there about her leaning over and putting his penis in her mouth. I
Okay,
see that he had
then
sex with
what-
her during the interview, but I see
Well-
that he used the condom during the oral sex encounter that took place in the living room.
Well,
According
let me
to
stop
him.
you. Let me stop you, Detective Austin. What did my client say happened between
That's what I'm
him
giving you right
and the
now.
victim? What was the exact words that he said?
Okay, I'm gonna go back up again. Detective Austin asked Bob if he had consensual sex with the girl. Advised he didn't actually have sex with her, but she performed oral sex on him the first day, which was Wednesday. That's what he said actually happened. Detective Austin advised that she still needs to talk to Chris and John the whole time. Chris, okay. Daquan advised he doesn't know if they had sex with the girl. Speaking of the other ones, he advised that he seen her smoking weed once in his presence, which would have been the Wednesday night. He advised that there was alcohol. Wednesday night. He went on to list everyone.
Did he indicate how this sexual this oral sex with a condom, where did it occur and how was it initiated?
He said that he went upstairs to charge his phone in the room, and he advised that he guessed there was no more room in the living room where the rest of the males fell asleep, so she came upstairs to the room. He advised that she slept in the room with him. So the only thing he advised as far as the oral sex was that it took place, like I said, in the living room. It's nothing in here. And this goes directly to a transcriber after it's audio and video recorded. There's nothing in here that says anything about her leaning over and placing his penis in her mouth. It just says that she gave oral sex that date.
She gave oral sex that day. Okay, but he does describe him going upstairs, correct?
Mm-hmm.
The girl coming upstairs with him, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, correct?
Yep.
And that they went to sleep at some point in time?
Yes, upstairs in the room. Yep. That's what he said happened in the bedroom, which kind of coincided with her story because she said that she went upstairs too, but she said sex took place in the bedroom. He's saying he went up there and went to sleep in the bedroom. So he put himself in the bedroom. He just didn't put himself having sex with her there, but he put her in the bedroom.
Okay. But going back to his statement, did he indicate how this was initiated? Was it in the bedroom or the living room?
He indicated the oral sex took place in the living room. It was never indicated how it was initiated. Nothing in this interview says anything about her leaning over and putting his penis in her mouth. It just says that when he was asked where the oral sex took place, he said it took place in the living room.
And that's in your notes.
That's in my notes. That's the audio and video recording. It's not notes. It's actually a transcribed interview from our transcriber at Clayton County. So what she does is she pulls the audio and video from the room and she sits and she types up the entire interview. So it's not like handwritten notes. These are the transcribed interviews.
Okay. So your transcribed interview has my client saying that that oral sex happened in the living room.
Yes.
Okay. Does your transcription say, was anyone else in the room? How was it initiated?
It says that he talks about the drugs they used, the alcohol they used, that he used a condom during the oral sexual intercourse. The sex took place downstairs in the living room.
When you say the sex took place downstairs in the living room,
Daquan advised the oral sex took place downstairs in the living room.
Okay, and if you would, just for purpose of my examination, could you refer to oral sex as oral sex and penetration sex as that as well?
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, all right.
So yeah, the oral sex took place in the living room.
Okay, but no details as to who was around, how it got initiated.
It says here they quantified the oral sex took place downstairs in the living room area. They quantified it was dark in the living room. They quantified he spent the night Wednesday night. They quantified he did. Next page. And then it describes him going upstairs to charge his phone and the victim going upstairs because there was no space for her downstairs in the living room. It never describes how anything was triggered and how the sexual intercourse started in the living room. He never described that for us.
Okay, and he did this at a police interview, correct?
Yes.
And he willingly told you that, correct?
Yes.
Because he believed he was having this sex with an adult 19-year-old girl, correct?
That's what he stated.
Okay, not a child, correct?
Nope, that he stated he thought she was 19 years old. Everyone stated they thought she was 19 years old.
Okay. All right. Now, you're stating that there was actual sex, intercourse, not oral sex, but actual sex between the victim and Mr. Baugh. Is that correct?
According to the victim.
According to the victim.
Yes,
Okay.
not Mr.
And
I
where,
never said Mr. Ba admitted to having sex with her. He admitted to oral sex with her. She is
Okay.
the one that stated she had regular intercourse and oral sex.
okay. And where did this alleged sex take place?
Living room and bedroom.
On two different occasions?
Mm-hmm. Same night, but she said that first it was in the living room where it started. She described it as giving oral sex to Mr. Ba while someone else was having sex with her. Then she stated when they got upstairs to the bedroom, they had sex, intercourse sex, and oral sex in the bedroom. But he denied having sex in the bedroom. He stated he only received oral sex in the living room. And he used a condom.
How was he identified? By the victim. How was he identified?
I'm going back to it now. I don't remember all the stuff off the top of my head. I have to go back into the notes. These were long interviews. Beatles, Mr. Ba, that long. He was described as tall. She described him as being one of the guys that was on the lawn in front of the house. She described him as light skinned, but not as light skinned as Mr. Beatles. Hold on. I think she might have given color of his clothes too.
She stated Mr. Ball was light skinned.
She said he was, in her opinion, but not as light skinned as Mr. Beatles. So that would be like, probably she was describing my complexion. I don't know what that means. And he was one of the people that she pointed out in the front of the house.
Okay. Now all the men admitted that having some type of sex with her, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody
Yeah.
denied that, correct?
No, well, one male denied it. He was just there at the time. I guess he was there to give somebody a ride because all the males were asked to come down to the precinct. So one was eliminated. He said he didn't know what was going on, what we were talking about. We were able to just let him go. Everyone else that we interviewed did admit willingly. Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Did willingly.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone believed that she was 19.
Yes, sir.
Like it was like they didn't think, nobody had thought that they committed a crime because they said, well, she's 19, right?
Yeah, from what I understand, no one felt like they committed a crime because they felt she was 19. I just want to make sure it wasn't Mr. Ba that started becoming suspicious that second day. I know it was Mr. Ba, Mr. Beatles that said by the second day they started asking her for an ID that she never provided. Let me just make sure it's not your client that asked her for it. Nope, that was Mr. Beatles. Mr. Beatles asked her for an ID the second day because he said he became a little suspicious.
Okay. And she didn't have ID on her?
Nope.
Okay. So how were you able to determine that she's 16?
How was I able to determine
That she was not 16 or
that
her
she
age?
was? Oh, this girl, if you want me to, that would be giving my opinion of how she looks to me. I don't know if I'm even allowed to give my opinion of how she looks. I'm a female and I have female daughters who are 22 and younger. So, I know the age differences. I can't speak for a male's point of view on how they would have been able to figure out her real age.
And I haven't asked you to, Detective. What I've asked you to do is, she said that she did not have ID. So how was she able to prove to you that she's under the age of 16?
Her mother told us her age and she was able to give us her date of birth.
That's your proof?
Yeah, biological mother who's a complainant on scene telling us, their daughter's name, age, address, and the officer confirmed that she was the missing person that was put on GCIC as a missing person. That's the proof that we had. That's what we go on when it comes to these juveniles. Not every juvenile that we encounter has an identification on them. But when their parent is on scene and able to verify, we do verify through that route.
How do you know that's her mother?
Because her mother was able to provide us with ID.
Her mother provided you with her ID.
Her mother provided us with ID her mother provided us with ID for her police report. The adult parent provided us with ID. That's how they were able to track that the adult parent is the one that reported her missing.
Okay, so you've never gotten an ID or a birth certificate from the mother?
No.
Okay. And even this occurred back in May 23rd. That information still has not been received?
No, the only information that's been received from the mother is that she was being signed into an institution in Florida. I'm trying to figure out what more information.
Well, I guess what I'm getting at, the daughter's not a Georgia resident, correct? She was never a Georgia resident.
She lived with her mother.
I'm gonna object that. Because I'm confused now as to where Mr. Toles is going. Whether or not she's a Georgia resident, I don't understand the relevance of whether she's a Georgia resident, Florida, Illinois. It doesn't matter.
Attorney Toles?
It's getting to me to where the proof of her age is concerned, as far as the mother and her using the mother as a witness to verify her age. It goes to the verification process, because I don't think that the mother was the legal guardian at the time. I think that she was being raised by her grandparents, and so therefore.
But see, none of that information.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So to assume facts not in evidence this is the epitome of assuming facts not in evidence. This is information you're given, Attorney Toles, that I don't
think the mother would have been allowed to report her missing on GCI.
Hold on 1 second. Hold on. We're going so far afield. Bring it back to the point where Detective Austin can respond to these questions, and bring it back to the point where the evidence that Detective Austin has collected is what you're asking her about. But to talk about something about who the child's guardian, where does that you may bring a witness when it's time for you to put your case up. Maybe you could bring a witness that can speak to that. But so far, that's not any evidence that has been supported or introduced that even substantiates that particular line. So let's get to something that sticks with what has already been asked.
Okay. All right. Let me.
Sir.
Okay. So the mother is the one that gave you this information, correct?
The mother and the victim gave me the information. I talked to the mother first, who was the complainant, and she was with the officers. And then I talked to the victim separately once I got the mother's permission to speak to the victim one-on-one.
Okay. And I know that there's going to be an assumption on your part that the mother knows the birth of her child, correct? That's what you're relying on, that the mother would know that information, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that would be the case if the mother was actually raising the child.
I'm gonna
Some
object
some
again.
parents
Mr.
don't.
Toll, Attorney Toles,
Hold on.
the question has been asked and answered regarding the mother giving the information. And now Mr. Toles is going back to asking, so it's the same thing.
And and I'm not going to go into my own experience. I'm trying my hardest to not even respond to this outside of a legal framework. This is something that this witness can't speak to, Attorney Toles. She can only tell you what she did, the information she gathered during her investigation. A mother giving birth to a child, even if you give the child up, you never forget when the child's, I'm not going to go into that. I'm just going to say Detective Austin can respond to any information that she accumulated during her investigation. We got to limit it to that, Attorney Toles.
Okay, so limited to your investigation, Detective Austin, was this mother the legal guardian?
Yes, the mother was a legal guardian according to the NIC, the GCIC entry for the missing person, and the information provided about the missing person that we took care of that day on scene. It put the mother as her mother, the person that reported her missing.
My question was the mother the legal guardian?
That's been asked and answered. The first thing out of Officer Austin's mouth.
If you don't know, you don't know.
Hold on, she answered it and she said yes.
Judge, she said she put her on GCIC. That doesn't make it a legal
yes.
guardian.
Okay, hold on. Detective Austin, were you able to determine if the mother was a legal guardian?
Yes, ma'am. The mother stated that she was the legal guardian of the child.
Okay.
Okay. Did the mother ever tell you about her living with her grandparents in Alabama?
Nope.
Okay.
And I never asked.
Did you get did the victim go to school here in Georgia?
I don't know. At the time I responded to this call, COVID was going on, so the victim wouldn't have been in school. I don't know if she was in online school. I didn't ask if she was in online school. The mother said that, right after this incident happened, she was sending her to Florida to rehab, so I never asked about re-enrollment in school.
Okay. Did you check the background information of each of these men? Run their
Yes.
criminal histories?
Yes.
Okay. As it pertains to Mr. Ball, is there anything in his background that would suggest to you that he's a sexual predator or anything like that? Does he have any other previous
I'm
sex
going to
crimes or
object to
anything like that?
That's not even relevant.
I can't hear. The judge is frozen up.
Judge, you're frozen.
Attorney.
Judge, you were
Okay.
frozen. Mhm.
All right, thank you. That's not relevant, Attorney Toles.
Okay.
That's not relevant. It's not relevant. So I sustain the state's
Okay.
objection.
All right. So essentially your case, Detective Austin, is a young girl pretended to be 19 years old, had sex with men, and they got arrested for believing that and having sex with her. Is that the case before us?
I mean, it was a whole lot more investigation, but I mean, if you want to sum it up that way, then yeah, they all admitted to having sex with a person that they thought was 19. One male actually questioned whether or not she was 19. And out of the 3 days she was there, no one requested identification, which is the responsibility of the adult to do when you're having sexual intercourse. And yeah, that's basically what happened. She was in the house for 3 days having sex with these men, and they were under the assumption she was 19 years old.
Okay. And she didn't have identification because she hasn't even been able to provide that to the police, correct?
She didn't have any identification on her when they asked her for it. And no, she never provided identification for us.
Okay. And you have no proof but for the mother telling you that she's under 16.
Again, I'm going to object. This has been asked and answered. It's been asked and answered.
Move on, Attorney Tolles.
Okay.
Sustain your objection. It's been asked and answered.
I'm done, Judge.
All right, does the state have any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Do the defense have, does the state have any other witnesses?
No, Your Honor, state rests.
All right, does the defense, first I'll start with Attorney Lewis. Do you have any evidence you want to put on, any witnesses?
No evidence, Your Honor.
All right, Attorney Tolles, any witnesses that you want to put on?
No evidence, Judge, nothing.
All right, argument.
Your Honor, state ways opening.
All right, we'll start with you, Attorney Lewis.
Your Honor, I would submit on the issue of, I guess it would be the aggravated child molestation as it relates to the oral sex, the warrants that relates to the oral sex. I will submit on those, but on the remainder of the counts, I would ask the court to consider dismissing those. There is an issue of corroboration. None of the defendants who are before us have admitted to sexual intercourse with the victim, who is 15 years old, allegedly 15 years old. None of them admitted to that. The evidence as it comes out is, first of all, there's an identification issue. I don't think that the detective in this particular circumstance has been specific enough as to who did what on what occasion. At best, what you have is a description of someone who is light-skinned, who is tall, but maybe not as tall as the other person. And there has been no corroboration insofar as the defendants corroborating the the victim's account of the actual sexual intercourse. It's alleged that my client, along with
Okay.
they were wearing.
Okay,
Clearly,
sir.
it's
You
also alleged.
Attorney Lewis, you froze for a second.
What was the last thing the court heard?
The last thing, not specific enough about who did what, in what particular order, no corroboration of, and that's the last thing that I got
Okay. She wasn't able to indicate who was wearing what. She was there over the course of 3 days, didn't know anyone's name, did not know. There's been no nickname that's been associated with my client, although it's alleged that she spent a significant amount of time with him. I understand that she was under the influence of drugs and alcohol, but that actually goes towards the issue of identification. There's been no suggestion that my client provided her with drugs, provided her with alcohol, provided her with anything at all. And so the fact that she was under the influence goes to the fact that she cannot properly identify the fact that it was my client who was having this orgy with her. And she, of course, there's been no corroboration from this Ma Dukes, who's indicated that she walked in on my client. And not only must you believe the evidence, but you have to believe based on the warrants that were taken out on this Ma Dukes. Because considering that if the individual is 15 years old, and is in her home having sex with her sons, she could have also been charged under a party to the crime theory. She was never charged with that. So, Your Honor, I would ask that the court consider a dismissal when it comes to the penile penetration charges. And then I would just submit on the issue of what it is alleged to have been said by my client concerning the oral sex.
Right, your client has 3 warrants. Aggravated child molestation based on sodomy, cruelty to children, and sexual battery. Those are the 3 that your client is looking at. And so you're submitting, I just want to make sure I'm clear, you're submitting on the aggravated child molestation, but you're not submitting on the cruelty to children and sexual battery.
Well, I'll say this, I won't make an argument as to it. I'm just submitting it to the court for the court's consideration.
Okay, all right, thank you, Counselor. Attorney Tolles?
Judge, my client is, he's charged with some pretty heavy charges, and I would ask the court to consider that he's charged with sexual battery against under 18. I don't know, 16. I don't know if I heard anything like that. Then there was a statutory rape charge. My client denied it. The young girl said she did. Then there was a sodomy charge for oral sex, and then there's a cruelty to children in the first degree again, and then aggravated child molestation. I don't see anywhere where he battered anyone or sexually battered anyone. I don't see anywhere where he was, intentionally cruel to children. Judge, because at all times, whatever occurred in that house, Judge, my client believed that she was 19. She put herself out there to be 19. She was very considered. She was very consistent with everybody in that house that she was 19 years old. She was a consenting adult. There was maybe some question about, well, are you maybe by somebody, but even the mother, Ma Dukes, everybody felt comfortable with her being 19 years old. And we know that, what may look like some, one age to one person might look like a different age to someone else based on their own experiences. What goes into these charges, Judge, is a protection of children. In other words, we're calling the young lady a victim. In other words, she's a victim. People took advantage of her because they knew she was underage. They knew she was under the age of consent, and they tried to get her consent. That's not what we have here, Judge. We have two consenting parties here, and a party acting under false pretense 19. She didn't say, hey, yeah, I'm 14, 15 years old. Yeah, I'd still like to come out and hang out with y'all, do drugs and have sex. That's not what she said. She said she's a 19-year-old adult. She said she was a 19-year-old adult. So if these charges, and I'm telling you, the aggravated child molestation, Judge, that's 25 years. 25 years for believing that you're having sex with someone that's an adult. The other ones are all pretty much felonies as well. And that's why I asked the question about the record. I thought it was relevant to show that my client is not some type of sexual predator that preys on young girls. Now I know there's a lot about you can't consent, but what about when the young lady is telling everybody she's 19 years old, and it's believed by even the mother, and even when she was asked to get out, it wasn't, hey, get out because you're underage. It's get out because you're just being you're sleeping with everybody. I mean, you're just being nasty, young lady. You need to go, young 19-year-old lady. You need to go home. So she gets home, she gets kicked out, and now she's coming back to destroy these young men's lives. These men had jobs. These men had, going on because she misled them into believing she was somebody that she wasn't. I remember Ms. Mayor Bottom saying when
Okay,
He froze.
okay. Attorney Tolles, well, if he's frozen, he can't hear me.
See if I can reach him.
And he probably was. Oh, now he's gone. Goodness gracious. He's probably gonna come back in.
He's trying to come back.
Okay, no, that's Tom. That's not him. That was Thomas Flores. It's another. There you go.
okay, here I am.
Attorney Tolles, right
Yeah.
when you said, the last thing that we heard was, I remember Mayor Bottom saying, and that for whatever you said from forward, you were frozen. So I wouldn't have.
Yes. What I was saying, Judge, was that Mayor Bottoms had said after the officer had shot, I think his name was Brooks at the Wendy's. She said something to the effect of, even though you could have shot him, should you have shot him? And I guess that's kind of where I'm at on this case. Yeah, you could charge legally. I guess you could charge the young man, a young girl, 3 weeks just shy of her 16th birthday. She's 3 weeks. I mean, 3 weeks. If this had happened 3 weeks later, it wouldn't even have been a crime. But should you? Should you do this, Ms. Mosley, Ms. Freeman, the district attorney's office? Should you charge these men that had no sexual predatory intent with sexual predator level type crimes? And I would argue, Judge, that due to the evidence that we have here, we understand that the young lady must have had something going on, because the officer testified that, she went down to Florida for drugs and all kind of things. So the young girl's clearly troubled before she met these young men. And I'm glad she's getting the help that she needs. But along the way, I don't know who this young girl has been with along the way. Are we going to prosecute everybody she's had sexual encounter?
All right, that's improper. That's improper at this point.
And so I'll just say this. This is not a prosecution that's built in to helping any type of quote unquote victim. If the victim herself is misleading the quote unquote defendants in this particular case. And so therefore, with all the inconsistencies regarding her status as a runaway versus not running away, being able to identify people, admitting that she was on drugs, admitting that she took alcohol willingly, her mind is not going to be as great. I had sex. I mean, to be able to go into that much detail when you've done so much in such a short period of time, remember every little detail, is going to be impossible for her. And I would just ask the court to dismiss the charges. If the state wants to bring this victim back from Florida to testify and charge these men as is, then so be it. But for these young men to be sitting in jail, and this girl may never come back from Florida, may never even remember what happened or care what happened, and these men being charged with these kinds of vile, despicable charges, and they're not vile, despicable men. Now, could they have used a little bit better judgment of just far as, having sex with somebody they didn't know? Of course that. But that's what young guys do. They have sex with people they don't really know that well. That's just what young men do. I'm asking the court, Judge, to take a look at the totality of the incident and dismiss all charges against Mr. Ball. He is not a sexual predator. He stated something, I think she said something about.
He froze again.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and there he goes.
He's logging out and he's going to try to come back in.
All right, thank you.
Mhm.
There he is. Attorney Tolles.
Sorry about the disconnection. I'm done with my argument, Judge. I'll leave it at that. I've just asked the court to consider, the intent the intent of the law, the intent of the law was to punish sexual predators, and that's not what this was. So I'd ask the state court to dismiss all the charges.
Okay. Attorney Freeman?
Thank you, Your Honor. And I certainly, I'm not going to make a long argument. I think the testimony provided by Officer Alston speaks for itself. The investigation began when the mother filed a complaint or filed a report missing person. And I'm sorry, I do hear an echo, so I don't know if that's on my end, but I heard an echo when Mr. Toles was speaking also, but
So he's muted, so it's not him.
no, I'm sorry, I heard it when he was speaking also.
Oh, I see.
Coming back and forth with me, but we heard the testimony. This victim was 15 at the time. The officer testified as to the age of the defendants at the time. We know that it's especially with the statutory rape that the ignorance is certainly not a defense with them. I understand believing that the victim was 19, but in fact she was 15. We heard Officer Alston indicate that Mr. Beatles at one point did become suspicious of the victim's age for asking her for ID. The victim indicated that there was marijuana, there was alcohol being passed around. There was an orgy that took place. There was oral sex that between she and Mr. Ba and Mr. Beatles. Based on what the victim said, there was also sexual intercourse or penetration sex. Based on what the victim indicated that happened. Based on all of the information that Officer Alston testified to, the interviews of the individuals that were provided, and even with the mother they referred to as Ma Dukes, indicating that she wanted the victim to leave because she was having sex with her sons. We're asking all of these charges be bound over to Superior Court.
You know, this is probably one of the most difficult decisions I'm going to have to make. I hear the argument of both Attorney Lewis and Attorney Toles in terms of everyone believing that the victim was 19, that at some level, both of your clients believe that they were having a sexual encounter with a consenting individual. There are challenges I see. My role in this is to see if there's enough information to go forward. Is there enough evidence to go forward to find probable cause? It's not a huge burden to meet. It doesn't require a lot. It requires just enough information, evidence, testimony to believe that the state has met its burden to prove that these charges or this incident could have happened. And I do find that there's enough information to hold probable cause. I'll start with Mr. Beatles. He's got the 3 charges: sexual battery, 52572. I do find probable cause for that. Aggravated child molestation, sodomy. I do find probable cause for that. That's 52573. And cruelty to children. That warrant is 52574. I do find probable cause for all 3 of those charges. Related to Mr. Bob, who's got 5 warrants. The first warrant is aggravated child molestation, 52562. I do find probable cause for that. I find probable cause for sodomy, 52563. For cruelty to children, 52564. Statutory rape, 52565. And sexual battery, 52566. I find probable cause for all. I think the only thing that that the court can do is talk about a bond. That's the only thing that the court can do that will help to ameliorate in some way. And I don't know if that's the right word, but to speak to everything that I heard today. So I am going to consider a bond And the bond is going to be probably something that the state may not agree to or agree with, but it is going to allow them to get out to help with their own defense. I don't see them as flight risk. I mean, there's certain things, certain factors that I would look at that the court needs to consider posting a bond. And I am going to consider those factors, and I want to do the bond hearing myself because I heard everything today that I needed to hear to be able to post a bond that's reasonable and fair in light of everything that I heard today. So let's talk about a bond hearing. Despite the probable cause that I find now, I think that as this case works its way up to Superior Court, there'll be some things that can happen. This is just nothing about this. This is just, I can't even give my opinion. I can have my personal opinion, but I can give my legal opinion that I heard enough to establish probable cause. And I heard what you said, Attorney Tolles, as well as you, Attorney Lewis. You understand probable cause. You understand the standard is very, very low. So talk about what's reasonable in terms of bond. I've got a couple of more hearings today. So this is Wednesday. Let's talk about when we can get together and have a bond hearing. Matter of fact, what we're going to do, I'm going to stop the live stream. Detective Austin, thank you so much.
Thank you, Judge. Have a great morning.
Thank you, officer.
No problem.
All right, so I'm going to come off the live stream. I'm going to go into a breakout room with Ms. Moultrie, and let's go ahead and set this down for a